The N64 is not known for its 2D platformers, and with good reason. The console launched with Super Mario 64 after all. It launched with a game that completely changed the way people thought about video games. Why would you fire an opening salvo like that and then go back to the way things used to be? Well, because 2D platformers are fun. They can be inventive and interesting in ways no other genre really allows for. We've been seeing the proof in the pudding for years now with games like Fez, Inside, and Super Meat Boy pushing in wildly different and exciting directions. But the N64 wasn't about that. It was about world-class 3D platformers, and that's totally fine by me. Except the N64 does have a 2D platformer worth talking about, and it's a game unlike anything I've ever played. It gives a fascinating glimpse into what could have been had the N64 matched its 3D platformers with equally well-crafted 2D games. This game is the bizarre, unforgettable Mischief Makers. Mischief Makers is uncomparable in that I can't think of another game I've played where I had such little idea of what was happening until so late in the game. I'll try to explain it as I understand it. So in Mischief Makers, you play as the robotic maid of a genius inventor, and you guys are investigating a signal from another planet when the professor gets kidnapped by Clancers, which are the depressed-looking little people who live on Clancer Planet. It's up to you to save them. The story itself is pretty simple. What isn't simple is the structure. This is not like other 2D platformers where your goal in each level is simply to get your character to some endpoint. In Mischief Makers, each level is a small chunk of someone's thought process. It's some person's idea of something that could happen given the game's mechanics. It's not the lava level or the ice level. It's the level where you have to navigate through a snowstorm by riding tricycles and collecting people in a pot. No two levels are ever alike, and no level ever feels like it is the result of a formula. You might spend 30 seconds talking to some Clancers and call it a day. You might fight a bee-man for a minute or two and then move on. You might be in an athletic competition involving math problems. You might suddenly be running from a boss on the back of an ostrich. There's a beautiful, twisted logic to this madness, but it isn't apparent right away. Solving the riddle of how the game operates is half the fun. One of the keys to unlocking this mystery is the knowledge that the entire game is based on grabbing and shaking, and sometimes throwing. The game reminds you of this up until the very last set of levels. This encourages a very experimental and non-standard type of play. You do not defeat enemies by jumping on them or attacking them, and there are very few enemies to begin with. The challenge is not getting through a level without dying, but in figuring out what each item in a certain level does and how you can use that to your advantage. Shaking a floating orb might make a different orb appear, or it might not do anything. A star might teleport you to the end of the level, or it might send you back to the start. You don't really know until you grab it and you shake it. This makes each level feel like its own little play area. It encourages a very freeform style play that is completely at odds with the linearity of other 2D platformers. This could have been a disaster, and there are levels that hint at what this game could have devolved into. Levels where the end goal isn't clear and where you stop trying to work out the world's logic and start trying to imagine what the developers were thinking. Luckily, each level is so short that the next idea is just around the corner. The one area where things don't congeal is the progression system. You are graded based solely on your level time, which is at complete odds with the gameplay of each level. Some levels are laid out like obstacle courses, and these levels are fun to master, but there are levels where all you do is talk to someone, or jump around a literal amusement park of orbs and platforms. These levels beg to be reveled in and explored, not rushed through. This isn't alleviated by the presence of yellow gems so much as it is confused. You collect one yellow gem per level if you can figure out how to acquire it, and these gems extend the length of the game's ending cutscene, which is an insane but interesting concept. These two systems congeal together in a way that leads to repeating levels for arbitrary reasons, when so much of the joy comes from not worrying about such things, and just being in this strange world as this shaking robot maid. But then you play dodgeball against a cat, so it'll help you fight a boss, and all my criticisms melt away.